August 18th, 1959.
My dad was born August 21st, 1959. I think it's the same day that Hawaii became a state.
Dad was born on August 18th, 1959, which is the day that Quake Lake was formed. He was sure to tell me that story about 1,200 times when I was a child.
Dad was born on either the 18th or the 19th of August. I really am not sure. I usually just kind of wait around until somebody else tells him happy birthday, and then I'll call him about 9 o'clock at night.
Well, when I was a kid, I thought he was born at Quake Lake, considering how much he talked about it. But where was he actually born? Polson, Black Eagle. I know it was Montana.
My dad was born in Black Eagle, Montana. He was either born there or he grew up there. Pretty sure he was born there.
Superior, Montana.
I think I remember the story. Dad was born in like a tar paper shack in Superior, Montana, and I'm pretty sure either an Amish elder or like some kind of train hobo delivered him in that shack.
Old Pete, also known as Peter Michael Clark.
His full name is
Yeah.
Peter Michael Clark.
His real name is Peter, but he doesn't like Peter. He goes by Mike. But his full name is Peter Michael Clark.
Dad's full legal name is Peter Michael Clark. However, he doesn't care for it very much, and he prefers to be called by the name that he is known by all of his family and stuff when he was growing up. And I like to use that name too, and that name is Asshole. I think Granny gave him that name.
I don't think I have a single childhood memory that's my favorite. I have a lot of memories. Most of my favorite ones were riding dirt bikes or learning to ride a dirt bike when I was younger. I completely destroyed that motorcycle, but for the most part, he was patient and I eventually learned how to barely ride.
Oh, we used to go camping out on the porch. He'd set up like a little bed and a couple sleeping bags. I thought it was a big adventure. We'd go out and sleep on the porch right out front.
Dad always smelled like sawdust when I was a kid, and even now when I smell it, it makes me think of him. Not necessarily the version of him now, even though he still smells like sawdust most of the time. But when I smell sawdust, I remember the dad he was when I was little, when he seemed so much bigger than me. And I remember playing in his garage a lot, on the floor, in the sawdust, of course, with all of his scraps, and he never minded that we wanted to be around. He always liked it, that we wanted to be there. And I also really loved when I would get to go with him to work sometimes, to go be on his construction projects with him. And he always found a way to make me involved, even though I'm sure I was not a help with anything at all. But he found a way to make me feel useful or to teach me something new, and it was always a really special day for me when I got to do that.
My favorite memory of Dad from my childhood was all of the countless hours I spent with him in his truss shop. When I think of Dad and I think of my childhood, I often think about those times, and it was really lots and lots of hours. It was really cool to be able to go out there and spend those moments with him, and it was that time in my life where I really kind of figured out what kind of person and what I wanted to do with my life when I got older. So I really just appreciate all of the time you spent with me in that setting, and I'll never forget it.
Lately, I've noticed he says, this isn't a dad saying, but he says flavor a lot when he talks about food. It always needs more flavor. That one's recent, but of course he says, we all know he says rotten all the time. And I feel like dadgummit came from him a lot, if I remember right. But yeah, all I can think of is flavor. There's so much flavor lately.
Dadgummit. Or he also says, howdy.
There are a lot of typical dad sayings. I have one that's my favorite, and it's kind of a saying, but it's a little bit longer than a saying, so I'm not sure how to classify it. But when I was in high school, I lived with my dad for a little while, and one day, it was during the summertime, so I was home, and we were eating lunch, and we were having peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch. And so we made our sandwiches, and we sat down, and we were eating, and it was pretty quiet, because we were eating, and my dad looked over at me and said, "Do you know what's wrong with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches these days?" And I said, "What, Dad?" And he said, "People don't put enough fixings on them." So that's my favorite one. I still tell people that all the time. That's what's wrong with peanut butter and jelly.
Dad has a lot of sayings that nobody else really uses, and I think that my brothers and my sister are probably going to hit some of the big ones, like how he always says howdy, or he would just as soon go fishing and work, or something like that. But it's actually not a saying. It's more of a, I guess, it is a greeting, but it's not any words. It's a hand motion. And I spent a lot of time on in the pickup truck with Dad driving around as a kid, and I used to marvel at the way he would wave at people when they were passing by. So he would be on the steering wheel, and he, instead of like just giving a couple of fingers like hello, he would raise his hand off the wheel and do this like twisting thing. And I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. So he's driving and someone would come by and he would just give him a little like this. And I don't know if it was like, he was adjusting an old thermostat or telling a young lady that was driving by that I will squeeze your breast in a kind of an awkward way. But I've never seen anybody else do it, and it's probably my favorite.
Well, it's kind of a long story. My brother John used to always bring me down into his room, and he'd have his buddies over, and they thought it was really funny to get me to sing the song Fire, Water, Burn by Bloodhound Gang when I would start cussing and stuff. They thought it was pretty funny.
I don't necessarily have a song that reminds me of my childhood, but I do. When I read that question that Jason sent out, a song came to mind, but it's probably a story that's better for him to tell. But I think it's an Aaron Tippin song, something about, how's it go? You gotta stand for something or you'll fall for anything. And there's a puppy on a string in that song. You should look it up on YouTube. I think one time Dad was trying, it came on the radio, and Jason was there with him, and he said something about, this is how I really feel about you. I don't know. I think they had a moment. I think they hugged.
I have one very specific song that whenever I hear it, which isn't too often, but once in a while I'll look it up on YouTube and laugh. I don't know the name of the song. We would have to look it up. But it's by this country singer guy. And the reason I think of it is I was driving with my dad one day, and this song comes on the radio, and it's starting, and he looks at me and he does that thing where he grabs your leg and he squeezes the knee a little too hard, and he goes, "Listen to this, son. It's everything I ever want to say to you." And it was a little weird, and I listened to the song, and I don't think I quite got the full song then. Listening, I get it now when I listen back to it, but all I remember is a puppet on a string. That's all I remember.
Oh man, just played outside all the time. I didn't spend that much time inside. Went fishing with Dad a lot, camping, all kinds of stuff like that.
Outside, barefoot, all the time. trying desperately to keep up with my older brothers, which I wasn't very good at. I remember playing a lot of Indiana Jones along the fence, playing that the ground was lava and you couldn't touch it. And never once did I get to have the whip, the rope, but they never let me have the whip. And we went on family camping trips a lot and going fishing with Dad every once in a while. Mostly just being outside.
Summers for me when I was a kid were just really awesome, I thought. One thing that has always been important to Dad is that you take time to just get away and kind of go explore things. So when I think of my summers when I was a child, I spent a lot of time camping or driving around in the woods with Dad. If I wasn't there, I was with Grandpa, of course, or out with my friends and Jason, just riding bikes, running around. And he always kind of encouraged that kind of thing. It's not really common anymore for kids to be able just to take off and go, you know, like Jason and I would go like poke around in abandoned slaughterhouses or, you know, throw stuff off a bridge. But, you know, Dad was always a big supporter of that, so that was pretty cool.
Summers. I remember a lot of mowing happening during the summertime. But aside from that, we did a lot of camping, a lot of dirt bike riding. I spent most of my childhood outside. I had a good time with my older brother a lot. We did some illegal things, but we did some things that were, you know, normal. We used to have home run derbies in the backyard. That was one of my favorites. But they were good. They were good.
I didn't have a lot of chores. I had to sweep the floor a lot, clean my room, and I was usually in charge of mowing once I was old enough to run the mower.
There were tons of chores. There was no shortage of chores on the Clark farm. Animals, we had animals to take care of. We had chickens at one time, and the asshole rooster, I don't remember his name, but I hated that thing. We had sheep, we had these little baby sheep we had to try to feed out of bottles, and they would just headbutt you, and they sucked too. What else did we have? We had a cow. I was terrified of the cow. I was always scared of the cow. I don't know why. I remember one day I got really mad at it because it wouldn't move, and I was trying to move it to another part of the grass to eat, and it wasn't listening, so I decided I was going to punch it on the head as hard as I could, and it's like a rock right there, and that just made me more mad. So I didn't like that. I didn't like the cow. But there was a lot of chores. We had horses too. We had all kinds of stuff. The one chore that I hated the most out of all of it was mowing. I hated mowing. We had acres. Well, maybe not acres, but it felt like acres.
Did have chores. I helped around the house a lot, and when we lived on the property by the river, I remember feeding and watering the chickens a lot, and there was that bastard rooster named Duke that he would always try to beat you up when you went inside, and so Dad would have to go in there with a hose with a pressure nozzle on and hose him into the corner and then put a bucket on it with a rock on top so that I could go in there without getting the crap beat out of me. And I had to take care of the horses and all that fun stuff too.
You know, Dad is a really good cook, but I think the one meal that he makes that's kind of like a signature dish, if you will, are Hobo Dinners. There's not a lot to them. You know, there's some tin foil, you put in some meat, and some potatoes, and some corn, and you kind of just get it hot. But what I didn't know is that how important like being prepared to be a hobo was to him. And if it wasn't for that, you know, I don't know what I would do.
His salmon, I love his salmon. He puts like the lime and the lemon and all the other junk on there. It's good. And one time, he only made it once, but I was playing in my room or something, and I came into the kitchen because he said it was dinner time, and there was this plate. I didn't know what to do with it for a little while. There was chicken ramen that was food dyed green with like a Polish sausage that was all split a bunch, and he like spread it all out on top and drew little eyes on it, so there was like seaweed with an octopus on it, That was pretty interesting.
My dad makes some good stuff. Potato soup is one of my favorites. I still call him every, 3 months or so, because I completely forget the recipe and I have to ask him again. I like the beans. The beans and ham is always good. But my favorite is Hobo Dinners, hands down. I don't know why I liked them so much. They were simple, sliced potatoes and ground beef and corn, wrapped in tin foil, put it on a barbecue. But I loved them. And when I was younger and I ate them, I really thought hobos were awesome, and I wanted to be one when I grew up.
Beans and ham hocks, I think. And hey, it's got a lot of flavor. But I always loved it when he made that. I still do when he makes it.
Yeah, there is one glaring incident in my childhood where I was doing something and I thought I would get away, but I didn't. I didn't get busted by Dad, but I got busted, and that was for shoplifting. I have never really defended myself. I just took the punishment as it came. But I got caught shoplifting at Shopco, and I stole a box of 30-30 ammunition. Got in a heap of trouble for that. But now that I have a chance, much older, I can tell you why. I was just trying to resupply the family ammunition cache in case the zombies
I really caused
come.
a lot of trouble when I was a kid because I learned a lot from my older brothers what not to do, so I tended to stay out of trouble for the most part, aside from harassing them when I was able to do it without getting my butt kicked. But I do have this distinct memory of doing something in front of Dad that I shouldn't have done, and I don't know why it has stuck with me so much. I think it was because I was just so afraid at that moment. So we're sitting at the kitchen table, and Dad's across the way from me, and there's a candy wrapper on the table. And I just reached over without thinking. I just flicked it off the table onto the floor. Why would you do that? I have no idea why I did it. But I did it in front of the tidiest, cleanest man on the planet. And the moment that the candy wrapper floated down and hit the floor, I remember thinking, what did I just do? And I looked up to see Dad's eyeballs as big as saucers, and I got in pretty big trouble.
When I would mow all the time, I would try to just cut out this little patch, and it was over in the corner, nobody'd ever see it. And I tried to skip little areas, and that didn't last too long.
I like to think that I didn't get into a lot of trouble when I was a kid. I'm sure I got busted for, the usual stuff. The big one was shoplifting. Yeah, I thought I was gonna get away with that, but I didn't. I didn't get very many valuable items like my brother did. My choice when I went there was I was gonna steal a power bar and a keychain that was a little lantern that lit up when you push the button. That was what was valuable to me at the time.
We did an awful lot of stuff with his riding lawnmower that I'm sure he would strongly disapprove of. Oh, and also, he bought me my first car. It was this 1989 Toyota Corolla, baby blue. I was driving on a gravel road with it one time and I lost control, and I ran that thing into the ditch and straight through a barbed wire fence on this farmer's property. And so I just drove it through the farmer's field until I got to his gate and then just kept going, and Dad never noticed all the barbed wire scratch marks on the car. Thank goodness.
Oh man. High school. I did a lot of stuff during high school. When I got that cop car, bad move. I did a lot of bad stuff in that car. I remember there was, on occasion, my dad would take the car. He would take it somewhere, or, hey son, I'm taking the car for the day or whatever. And I would always panic because I would just be praying that he wouldn't open the trunk, because most likely there was just going to be empty 12 packs of beer back there.
I had a paintball gun pistol, and I never got to shoot it. Well, I did sometimes, did it a little bit, but I shot it a lot actually, because I would go. I think he was always wondering where all the CO2 and the paintballs would go. Like, I don't know, they just disappeared. And especially when my cousin like Tyler and stuff would come over, we'd go out when you managed those apartments. We'd take it out into the field and shoot stuff, poles, basketball hoops, slide. We were terrible. Man, he did get hurt a lot, but one time, that was pretty funny. I laughed anyway. He thought it'd be funny to just try to tickle me, and I just wasn't having it or something. I just poked him in the eye, and he quit that pretty quick.
Didn't happen a lot. I wasn't really involved very much when Dad got hurt. I was never there when he got hurt because he was always doing something with the boys or he was at work. But I do remember the after effects when he got hurt a lot. Like when he got hurt in the garage with the can of glue. I feel like I remember walking in and seeing him lying down on the truss stands. I don't know what they're called. And then I think I got yelled at to leave. And I remember after he blew up his knee on the motorcycle, he was trying to drag himself up the stairs, and I was there to witness that. And then was again quickly ushered away because I was the youngest for a long time, so I didn't get to stick around when Dad was hurt.
Oh man, there's so many to choose from. My favorite time that Dad got hurt, I was in high school again, and I was helping him work on a roof for Chris and Nikki Hughes' house. We were putting roofing on, and it was shingle day. Well, shingle day for me. I was helping him do shingles, and I was down on the front porch. It was a 2-story house, and I was down on the front porch putting shingles over the cover of the front porch, and my dad was around the side of the house, and he was doing something on the second floor. So he had a ladder on the roof of the first floor going up to the second floor, and it's Montana, so it's completely flat, and it's really windy. And I remember just hearing this crashing noise, and I got up and I ran to the edge of the roof, and I looked down, and my dad's just laying on a pile of siding, groaning, and so I start panicking, and I run down there, and I'm like, "Oh my God, Dad, do you need help? Can I help you up?" And he's like, "No, I just need to lay here for a minute." And of course, in true dad fashion, he never went to the doctor for anything.
So I seem to always be witness to the times where Dad would injure himself. For instance, when we were working construction together, he dropped like a 30-foot wall of a house on his big toe. I thought that was really hilarious. I still like to stomp on it because, of course, he didn't get proper medical attention. So I do like to kind of bother him with that still. It's not my favorite. He did cut off a finger. I like that one a lot because he put it in his pocket. And then he had like an unqualified urgent care doctor stitch it back on, and it died. And they had to throw the finger in the garbage. But even that wasn't my favorite injury. My favorite injury of all time is the glue can incident. And I can't help but feel a little bit responsible for what happened to him because this kind of goes back to the truss shop days. He had a upright disc sander, and I was trying to build a project, but the sandpaper was old and needed to be changed. At the time, I was really into basketball, and I was trying to smooth out these little discs that I had cut so I could glue them to the top headboard of my bunk bed. I thought that would really polish off the whole basketball kind of feel I was going for in my bedroom. Most of you know the story about what happened. He sent me to the smaller shop on the property to get a new actual disc. For the disc sander, he had pulled the old one off, and he got a can of glue out so he could spray the new disc down and put it on there. It was a bad scene, but what had happened is he put the glue can within about 10 feet of this old this wood-burning stove that he had built out of 55-gallon drums. And the glue can came to a pretty hot temperature, I'm guessing, and he was shaking the glue can, and on the downstroke, the lid blew off, and it shot out, and it just blew his balls just to pieces. When I came back into the shop, all I saw was like a haze of white. The whole shop was just covered, the air was just filled with white glue, and I like swam through this white glue mess, and I found Dad leaned up against a sawhorse, and he was totally frosted with this white glue. He didn't look injured, he just said, "Go get me a glass of water." So I always did what I was told, and I went inside, and I told Mom, "Hey, Mom, Dad got hurt, and he wants some water." So the rest is history. But it's not really history. I mean, it impacts my life to this day. Now, I mean, obviously, I teach shop class to high school kids, and I always have to warn them about safety and stuff. So on all of my cans of aerosol things that I have in here, I put a little note on there. Unfortunately, my tablet films everything kind of in reverse, so the writing is backwards, but if you can read in reverse, you'll be okay. So I have it on there. It says, "Shake gently. This thing will blow your balls to bits." And I can't tell you that I've probably saved a lot of kids from a lot of just terrible things. So the glue can, it's got to be my favorite.
He used to send me to school like this, with a comb over.
The most embarrassing thing Dad ever did to me was when I was a freshman in high school. And it was only embarrassing because we were having a conversation in the car as we were driving home. Nobody else was around, but I was kind of not feeling well, and I was kind of ailing from what I'm thinking now was like a bladder infection. And I was trying to communicate to him that I didn't feel very good. And he asked me, what's going on? And I said, well, it stings when I pee. I'm not really sure. It kind of hurts. So instead of saying, well, maybe we should take you to the clinic, you might have a bladder infection, or it could be something else, he just looked at me and said, "What do you do? What have you been doing? Poking poison holes?" Now, I was a freshman in high school, and I had like an idea of what that meant. This is before I had Google to Google, poison holes. What is that? I could only assume what he meant. It was later in sex ed where I realized that poison holes was just something just terrible. And they showed me images. And to think that that's what you thought of me, God, I was so embarrassed. You should be embarrassed too. It's so hard for me to think back to one moment where Dad was there for me that meant a lot. There were so many. I guess I'll pick a couple of my favorites. Most of them are after I left home. So when I left home and I went to boot camp, for example, and I knew my family was going to come see me at graduation, he was probably the one person I was most eager to see, so I could kind of, just enjoy that moment with him and see how he reacted, or if he was proud of me for my achievements. That was really cool. He was there. He was there for all of my kids when they were born. He celebrated with me when I was graduating college and grad school, and countless many times in between.
There's been a lot of times that he's been there for me. So most recently, one of the ones that meant the most to me was when I got divorced, and I was going through all of that. It was a pretty hard thing for me to deal with at the time, but he was always there to talk to, and he would always call and check up on me, make sure I was doing okay, throw the occasional bad joke about rotten women in there. It really meant a lot, and it helped
when my grandfather died, that it meant a lot because he was there to support us all, and yeah, he was there for us and was really supportive. And yeah, we'll leave it there.
One of my earliest memories is when I got my very own bedroom for the first time. The boys were in bunk beds in the smaller room, and I got the bigger room to myself. I don't know how that happened. But I think it was one of my first nights in there, and I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't sleep. And I remember Dad coming in, and he turned on this really little lamp that I had on my bedside table. And he sat down next to my bed and sang songs with me, which I never remembered him doing any other time, like singing with me like that. But he sang songs with me for what felt like hours until I felt so much better and I went to sleep. And I'll always remember that. And I also remember that he would come into my room every single night before bed and he'd tuck me in and pray with me. And that was a really big deal to me. And he's still there for me all the time. I ask him tons of questions for advice about, everything. He knows everything. And he would never hesitate to give you the shirt off his back. He helps me all the time. And whenever I need something, I know it's never too much to ask.
My favorite memories are from the time period where he and I were partners and we were working construction. I felt like those years are when I really came to know my father really well. The best memories for me are all those evenings after work where you and I would just go out bow hunting someplace. And I don't know, I kind of go back there sometimes in my mind because I just loved it so much, and I really cherish those times.
I remember I went through this phase where I always wanted to sing for him, and I of course was really little and a horrible singer. But I remember that while he would be working on the house on the river, I would just sit there in the corner of whatever room he was working on and sing song after song after song, and it had to be the most horrible thing ever. But he always listened, and he always told me how much he liked it and made me feel good about myself. And he was busy a lot when we were kids, but he always made time to play games with us and stuff. And that was always really special to me. And I remembered one about him hurting himself that I have a pretty great memory of that makes me laugh. So he didn't hurt himself with an injury necessarily. He did hurt himself by mixing a few too many muscle relaxers with beer or wine or whatever it was. And when he came to put me into bed, or to kiss me goodnight for bed that night, he basically passed out when he leaned over to kiss me on the forehead. And I was freaking out and yelling for Mom, and then he, out of nowhere, gets back up, and I remember him wandering down the hall, bumping into things, blaming it on Johnny's cheeseburgers, because John had just got a job at a restaurant, one of his first jobs, and was proud of himself that he was learning how to cook, and he had made us all cheeseburgers that night. And Dad thought for sure that John had poisoned him. It was pretty awesome. John and Mom had to wrangle him to his bed, and then call poison control, I think.
All-time favorite memory would have to be the hike that we did back to the Hidden Lakes. That was probably the best camping trip of my life. And I know I was young then, but I still haven't had anything that comes close to that. Yeah, that was amazing.
One time we were fishing out the back of his boat, and he was like, "Oh, be careful, you'll get all wound up in the motor with your line." We're both fishing right off the back with the motor, and he was all giving me a bunch of hell. He was like, "You better make sure you don't get caught, it'll get that all wound up in the motor real easy, keep the tight tension on it or something, And so then we were both fishing out the back, and we both caught something at the same time, and we were like, oh shoot, we just caught each other's lines. And anyways, we started reeling it in, and anyways, he was all wound up in the motor, and he was all mad about that, and I had a nice big rainbow trout. Like, that was one of the biggest ones I ever caught. He was not too happy about that.
Happy Father's Day, Dad. To you, from me, from Carlin, from the boys. We love you so much. I hope you're able to smile and laugh with this video, and I can't wait to see what Jason does with it. I hope we just have so many more times with you. You are getting old, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Oh, also, I built you something in shop class. It's a machine. Check it out. Happy Father's Day. Love you.
Oh, Dad, I've realized that as I've gotten older, and I get to know myself better, and I get to know you better, I'm realizing that there's so much about me that I get from you. So much more than I ever thought when I was younger. I look like you in a lot of ways, and I have a lot of your really odd quirks, and I feel like I get a lot of my intelligence, my ability to learn really, really fast and to problem solve. I know now that that comes from you. And all of these parts of me that remind me of you, I really love all those parts about myself. So thank you for that. And happy Father's Day, Dad. I love you so very, very much. And I know I'm going to keep loving you for the rest of my life. And thank you for being there.
Hey, Pop, happy Father's Day. I wish I could be there in person when you watch this. I wish we could be there in person a lot of times so you could, see my family, be around more. We could spend more time together. I hope you have a great Father's Day, and I love you.
And I just wanted to say happy Father's Day, Dad, and I appreciate all you do for us, and you're always there for us, and I hope everything goes good with your inspection stuff, and you have a great Father's Day, and we'll see you in 1 week, and get to hang out.
Why is this thing beeping? God damn it.